one chord to another or never hear the end of it. I still love Dave Grohl as a drummer. Yeah, and I remember seeing him playing Scream at the Rivoli here in Toronto in like 1988. He was so skinny and long blonde hair and this giant yellow drum kit. I thought it was awesome. I say Jay's trying to do a Kurt Cobain back in those days. Jay's resource material was even more sophisticated than that. But you know, when you're young and impressionable and you're in a band, you pick your models. Like, okay, I want shoes like whatever. Paul Simonin's got really nice shoes. I like that guitar that Paul Weller plays. Like you it's like a little candy store. You got there's no such thing as originality. Why bother? If you're striving for it, you're a bloody idiot. Other than being a citizen of this country and being someone who was born here, it doesn't carry over too much for me. I mean, I live here. I've always lived here. It's not to say I will always live here. I don't put a lot of time thinking about it. I don't write songs specifically kind of glorifying or celebrating it. I mean, I love living here, but this is where I've always lived. Every time I'm in the States, I'm always really glad to get back here. Put it that way. There's too many to shed light on. There's tons.
Yeah.
Why did I play that on that record? Why did I do that? Or, you know, anything. Of course, you always have them. As an artist, you're always looking back on your old work that you can't really go back and rework and think, if we just did this a little bit differently, it would be so much better. But that's inevitable too. Again, there's too many to mention. Like there's just playing show. One of the most profound highlights for me was playing, and I saw Peter Rowan on this day, playing at Sappy Fest in New Brunswick, in Sackville, New Brunswick last summer, and we played our second record twice removed from start to finish, and that was our show. And that record has never particularly been one of my favorite records, but that's not for me to like or dislike, because I was in the process of making it, and it was a weird machine when we put that thing together. But hearing it played by the four of us, or the five of us, adding Gregory, and just seeing the looks on the faces of the people who were there, who were clearly touched by that record and clearly loved it. It was a really, again, just a kind of profound experience, like playing through these songs that I hate. I've listened to them maybe twice on the actual album. I'm constantly skipping this or that. But playing them and just seeing the adoration on the faces was really pretty special. Well, it makes you, who doesn't like to hear that people like what you do? Like whether they're other musicians or actors or just Joe Blow on the street. Like everybody loves positive reinforcement, but you gotta know that there are legions of people out there that really don't like the things that you do, but that doesn't matter. And I'm glad somebody didn't make these videos where people are like, man, give me 20 reasons why Sloan are the shittiest band in the world. Alright, number one, they're a bunch of assholes. Like, that might have been more funny But yeah, sure, it's nice to hear. It's nice to hear that people like your stuff. I've always wanted to go to Russia. And we've never been up to Scandinavia. That would be pretty nice. Playing in China would be pretty awesome. But I don't know. Again, I don't really think about that too much. I'm just trying to think, well, I've got a show next week in some weird town in Ontario. Hope that's good. That's my next battle. That's what I've always equated my drumming with, just kind of the falling down the stairs. I never put the bowling ball in there, but I like it. Big 3-hole Fred Flintstone. Sure. Well, I mean, Chris was a totally influential drummer on me. I wouldn't say he taught me how to play. I already knew how to play, having it in my blood. And I can remember I used to live here in Toronto in the late 80s with a band called the Jellyfish Babies. And they had a practice space in the basement of the house. And Mike Belitsky, the drummer for the Sadies, was the drummer for the Jellyfish Babies. And we were good friends then. And he would always, when he was at work, I would go down and play his drums and play along to whatever. I remember specifically playing along to Double Nickels on the Dime, Minutemen. And I would just sit there and learn from George Hurley these weird little bits and pieces. Oh, I thought it was pathetic and utterly predictable. And had they won the Stanley Cup, it would have been even worse. It's such a shame.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
glad I don't live there. I never got it. I don't own any of their records. I mean, I know a couple of their songs, and I think Liam's a really good singer. I love reading interviews with them. I think they're fucking hilarious. But as a band that's like, oh man, you gotta go and you've got to get every Oasis record and just listen to them from start to finish. They're not really my cup of tea. Laura Borealis. Whose ex-girlfriend?
Yeah.
Oh, Chris dated her years ago. I used to love Big Black, and I remember reading Forced Exposure, Big Black tour diaries that he had written in the 80s, and they were some of the most laugh-out-loud, funniest things I've ever read. He's from Vancouver. He's completely crazy, and he's a very smart, does his homework, guerrilla journalist. And he's calmed down a lot since the olden days, where I remember we did an interview with him, I think on one of our first trips to Vancouver, and he completely got us. I can't remember if it was all of us there. I know Chris and I were there. I can't remember Jay and Patrick being there. But he'd had us on the radio and then took a phone call from some guy, just some friend of his, who was just rambling. I think he was totally taking the piss out of us. But the whole interview was him on the phone with his friend, just telling tales out of school. And Chris and I were just kind of completely, he got us good. There's too many. There's too many for me to specify. I have a million pet peeves. But I generally try to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I know that I'm not perfect. And fuck, I'm sure I do things that irk people on an hourly basis.